Hi, so you're thinking about moving to Rancho Cordova outside Sacramento?
Well, that's a great question, and definitely you're in the right spot.
Yes. Hey, it's Renee and Mike with the Friedrich team at eXp Realty and the Living in Sacramento YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and hey, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here below, and also the alert button, right?
Yes, so you'll be the first to know about all things living in Sacramento and the surrounding areas like Rancho Cordova, which we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and then, we get questions from people like you all the time about what's going on in Rancho Cordova, what's going on in Sacramento, right?
Yes.
So just go ahead, whether you're moving in a month, in a week, tomorrow.
If you're moving tomorrow, call us now. Seriously, whether you're looking to move in a week, a month, or a year, as I always say, definitely reach out. We love getting calls and texts and emails from people just like you.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's dive into the pros and cons about
Rancho Cordova.
Just for people that are not familiar, it's along the Highway 50 on the way to Lake Tahoe, about 20 minutes outside of downtown Sacramento. Right?
Yeah, 20-25 depending on the traffic,
right.
And depending on where you're at in Rancho Cordova. It's actually pretty well spread out, and there's lots of newer areas in Rancho Cordova, and then there's some really nice established areas as well. So
right.
lots to offer.
Yeah,
sure.
So let's talk about the first pro we put on the list.
Yes.
Rancho Cordova is actually its own city.
Yes.
It used to be a part of the unincorporated area of Sacramento County, and then in
2003,
That's
they
right,
became their own city. I actually talk about that on our video blog tour when I do my walking tour of 3 different neighborhoods. And I mainly focused on south of 50 when I was out and about. And so if you guys haven't seen that video, definitely check that out as well. But we did talk about the fact that they were their own city, which is great because you get amenities like you have a mayor, you've got your own police force, right. And lots of different.
Well, rather than being controlled by the county supervisors, right? You have your own representation. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the mayor. It's all a little bit more accountable on the political side of things, I think.
Yes.
So being its own city definitely has its advantages,
yes.
Which is why we put it on the pro side. No, you may disagree and put it on the negative side, but
there's
okay.
Pros and cons with every pro and con.
That is true. That's why those videos are so much fun, right?
I know, yeah, it could go either way.
Yeah.
So I think that part of that, being its own city, though, is there's 80,000 residents in Rancho Cordova, and so that is a really big area for when it wasn't incorporated. Yeah. And so I think those 80,000 residents really enjoy having that identity of being their own special city.
Right. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. And let's talk about the makeup of Rancho Cordova, because mm-hmm. you said you focused on the south side a little bit.
I did.
Or mostly, right? Which there's a lot of industrial areas in that section too.
Right. We did talk about that a little bit too, because we just had a new company that just announced that they're going to be relocating some of their, actually like 1,800 people to Rancho Cordova, mm-hmm. and so Solodime. And there's a ton of industry in Rancho, and it's a very pro-industry city,
right?
Too,
which could be a negative if you don't like a heavy industry, right? Mm-hmm. But they're repurposing some of the areas, which takes us into the next pro, right? Mm-hmm. If you haven't heard of it, it's the Barrel District. There's such a thing. It has 5 breweries, 2 distilleries, mm-hmm. place that I can't pronounce the word for. Maybe you can.
It's kombucha.
Kombucha. Okay, that makes sense.
If you're in the know, it's one of the latest street trends. We're more about the beer and the wine, so it's not our thing. But lots of our clients drink kombucha.
Since I just heard that today for the first time, believe it or not, yeah. I did a little bit of research. So because people say it's beer, and it's not beer because it's made out of tea leaves.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was made out of. I smelled it one time and it didn't smell very good, so I just didn't try it.
Well, I've never heard of it. But Texan Trade Bureau actually considers it a beer, and so they make people put the word beer on the label. So that's a little fun fact for you. Nothing to do with Rancho Cordova other than that it's in the Barrel District.
Okay.
And if you want to know a little bit more about it, give us a shout out, text us, email us, and we'd be happy to provide you the link for the Barrel District.
Oh, that's so nice of you.
Yeah, I know.
And so we talked about the industry being a pro, but it is definitely somewhat of a con as well. And so, just knowing that there's, a ton, like the business center, the business park It's a huge part of Rancho Cordova. I feel like I drove through it for miles and miles and miles the other day. So I know we sort of mentioned it, but I just wanted to say that that's definitely for some people could be considered a con because you've got all that industry right amongst some of the residential.
Yeah, but what you were talking about was just like the office and stuff. That doesn't really matter that much. The most industry, when I say industry, I think heavy metal, right?
Oh,
picking yards, things like that.
Yeah, that was there too. That's true.
And there's a lot of those.
Yes.
We actually stored our boat somewhere there, right?
Yeah,
so
it
we
was
could
pretty
do
close
boat
by.
storage as well.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's do
back to a
another pro.
Yeah.
I think the proximity to downtown Sacramento is phenomenal, right? As Renee said, sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's maybe 40 minutes if there's an accident on Highway 50. But you are super close to Sacramento. You're actually super close to Elk Grove too if you go the back way, right?
Yeah, you can just take Grant Line all the way down and you're in Elk Grove in no time at all.
Yeah.
So that's true. And actually, that's one of the things that we were going to talk about is being, again, a pro and a con. The school district, if you're, depending on where you're at in Rancho Cordova, you could be part of the Elk Grove School District. They're so close.
Yeah.
So.
And again, if you want to know more about where the school districts are, be happy to answer that question for you.
Yes, that's one we get all of the time.
Yeah.
But half of Rancho Cordova is part of Folsom Cordova School District, and the other part's a part of Elk Grove Unified School District. Both school districts, and this is why it's a pro, both are really well rated.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's pro or con, depending on what side of the aisle you're on.
Right.
I
don't think it's an aisle issue.
Is it not?
No,
it's just a parent issue.
It's just a parent issue.
Okay, good.
And I mean, whether you have kids or not, school districts are always important because that does help determine cost of housing, which is another pro for Rancho Cordova, I think.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you compare it to Folsom, right? Folsom is pretty pricey.
Yeah.
And if you can see yourself living 20 minutes further south, you can knock off quite a few.
Well, it's only like 10 minutes from Folsom, if that.
Yeah, that's true.
And you really, I mean, it could shave a couple $100,000 off the sales price of a comparable home.
Yeah.
Just to be one city over. So
that's right.
and you're closer to downtown in Rancho Cordova than you are in Folsom.
Yeah. So if you haven't figured it out quite yet, so when we say pros and cons, it's mostly pros.
For most of our cities, that's the case, though,
exactly.
right? I would say another pro and con is the proximity to the American River. And Rancho Cordova has like 26 miles of walking, biking, running trails, and oh my gosh, acres and acres of parks and tributaries and, you know, all sorts of, like, if you're an outdoors person, Northern California is definitely a place you want to check out, and specifically Rancho. There's so much to offer.
And it's so close to Lake Natoma, although technically not in Rancho Cordova, right?
Yes.
It's very calm waters. I think we talked about it in the Folsom video, that there's the aquatic center from Sac State where you can do rowing. We did
paddleboarding out there.
Believe it or not, we do
some of our friends are crazy and they do triathlons and they go practice their open swim out there.
Yeah.
It's very cold water though, so you want to be really careful if you're out on Lake Natoma.
Yeah, because it's coming out of the bottom of Folsom Lake.
The bottom of Folsom Lake,
right.
Yeah. So not the part that got heated over the summer.
Yeah.
The other part.
Exactly.
So what I was going to say though, the reason that can also be a con, being so close to the American River, is that we do tend to have some homeless camps that do set up along the river all the way through the whole Sacramento region. Yeah. And so you do have that to contend with.
So it's not unique to Rancho Cordova, it's unique to the American River Parkway.
Yeah, really, I think probably most waterways throughout.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. So there is, you know, we do have a homeless issue currently, and so that's where you'll mainly see that happening in Rancho Cordova and other cities, like I said.
Well, let's go back to pro, and I think if you're into flying and air shows and things like that, Rancho Cordova is the place to be because they are hosting every year the California Air Show.
Yes.
Right.
And we went to a fundraiser out there one year too, and they had all the private jets set up so you could, you know, take pictures in front of them and stuff. Maybe I'll find a couple and we can throw that in here.
Yeah.
It was a fundraiser for St. John's, the Place for Change, and it was really cool the way they had that set up. So it used to be a former Air Force base, and they've repurposed that. You'll actually see UPS and FedEx flying into, which airport is it?
It's Mather.
Sometimes I get Mather and McClellan mixed up because they were both Air Force bases.
And they both start with an M, right?
Exactly. So, but one's on Highway 80 and one's on Highway 50, and Mather is on 50.
Exactly. So if you're fortunate enough to have your private jet, if you want to fly into Sacramento, fly into Mather.
Yes,
right?
pick Mather.
There you go.
And then pick us up. Like,
Yeah.
we'd love to fly with you in your private jet, too.
Absolutely, would love to. Until we have our own, and then
Yes.
we'll maybe
Yeah.
take you on the ride.
Yeah. So I would say Mather is definitely a big pro, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
And yes, the air show is always super fun.
Yeah.
A lot of our friends are work for Safe Credit Union, and they're sponsors of that, and so it's a great event.
Yeah. And I mean, and with that comes another con, right? Because there is actually quite a bit of activity still with flying in and out.
Yeah.
I think the Air National Guard may have a few planes stationed there too still.
Mm-hmm.
So on the weekends they do their,
The drill
takeoffs
weekends.
and the drill weekends.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the week, you have the UPS and the FedEx planes and all the cargo planes coming in, and you're in the approach line.
Right. Yeah, you
So-
definitely hear the airplane noise, especially with the FedEx and the UPS planes coming in.
I remember when one time we had a soccer game on an early Saturday morning, literally almost next to the runway. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It was super loud.
So the kids, they
The
were
kids
not
just
as loud as
feel-
the
yeah.
planes.
The kids just roll with it.
Yeah,
Let's face
that's
it.
true.
It's just the parents that get all weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I was scarring because I still remember it. And it's been a
And that's
while.
been a long time. Our kids are 17 and 20 now,
That's
so
right.
that's been a minute.
Well, let's talk another pro though, the
Yeah.
Children's Museum.
Oh
And
gosh.
there's a fun story behind that,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Well, isn't the Sacramento Junior League?
yes.
Didn't he help with that?
We did, yeah. Junior League of Sacramento is a nonprofit that's near and dear to my heart. I served on the board. Actually, I'm on the board again. I've been on the board off and on for years and years. And they have helped many nonprofits get their start over the years. And when I was active in the league the first time, they launched the Children's Museum. And I talked a little bit about that in our tour as well, and showed you guys the outside of the museum, and just shared a quick tidbit. We took our boys there when they were little, and there's just so much to do. It's a very hands-on center, and so you really get to play and explore and just learn.
Yeah,
all
it
this
reminds me a little bit of the Science Museum in San Francisco,
Mhm.
right?
Exploratorium.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that what it's called?
that is
Okay.
what it's
Never
called.
mind. That's
We
what
took
it's
them there too. Oh my gosh.
You should definitely, since we are at that, we're getting ready to tape another episode, and it's going to be called the Top 50 Things to Do in Sacramento.
And when I was going through the list that we
Yeah.
put together, there's actually even things that we didn't get on the list.
Yeah.
So there's so many things to do all over Sacramento, but the Children's Museum did make the cut. So
Okay,
it's on
that's
there.
good. So
Yeah.
if we are hurrying up, we hopefully have the editors the video ready so they can plug it in
Oh,
here,
that'd be cool.
right?
Yeah.
And so hopefully it'll pop up right here.
Yeah,
Right
we'll
now.
see.
Well, there's one last thing on the negative side of things.
Mhm.
It's pretty flat.
Oh, it is.
But if you're from Florida, you won't care.
And truthfully, you guys,
Or
I know,
Texas,
yeah,
right?
or
Yeah.
I know that the media always says, "Oh gosh, everybody's moving out of California and they're all going to Florida and Texas." And we really pay attention to Where Money Walks. That's a website that the IRS puts out, and we have people coming in from out of state all the time. So it's not always people leaving here. We have a lot of people coming in, and I think especially for our region, because we are the affordable California option.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's true.
and especially in Rancho Cordova, because there's so much industry and so many businesses that are relocating either from the Bay Area or even up like Washington, Oregon area.
And we're
Yeah.
talking good paying jobs, right?
Yes.
I mean, tech jobs, healthcare jobs.
Yeah,
really
they're
good
saying that
jobs.
Rancho and Folsom is like the second Silicon Valley. They
Well,
can-
there's one more fun fact that I didn't put on there that you probably know, or maybe not.
I don't know.
If you watch the NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt,
Oh yeah,
did you know that he actually grew up in Rancho Cordova?
you should always
check me.
fact check that.
Right.
Check this.
But yeah, so he's from there, and
Yeah.
I believe he went to school there in Rancho.
That would make sense.
So maybe if Lester sees it, maybe he can give us a shout out.
Yeah, give us a comment, Lester, and tell us if we're right or wrong. So I think all in all, like usual, the pros definitely outweigh the cons for Rancho Cordova. And yes, it's a little bit more on the flat side than if you get into the foothill areas. And I mean, it just makes it that much easier to walk and bike and do all of the sporty things because you won't have those hills to contend with. So
Right, and there's still a lot of potential for growth, right? Especially
Yes.
to the south. So at some point, probably it'll merge with Elk Grove
They'll probably, I
Right.
think they're almost coming together at this point even. So
Yeah.
yes, the sprawl is real here in Northern California.
Yeah.
But we still have a housing crisis, so we need the homes.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a little goofy one. But that's how we are.
That is how we are.
Right?
And so we like to have fun. We like to have fun with our clients that are moving here to the area. So again, if you are new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below, hit that alert. And again, if we can help you with any real estate questions or anything about the area, we are so happy to, and look forward to helping you make a smooth move to Sacramento.
And in this case,
Rancho Cordova, yeah.
All right, guys, take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.